Hello, welcome everybody to Who Knew. We're back again. We're back doing the old stuff. We're doing old Who Knew episodes again after the 6 weeks of madness that was Flux. I mean, thank you everybody for all your kind words on Who Knew Flux. It was a lot of fun to do, and thank you to all of the guests that came on. But we're back to it, and we're not quite done with Flux yet, because my guest here today, of course, is, as you probably already know, is the wonderful Pete Levy, who is a producer on Doctor Who Flux. So, I mean, we'll start, before we get into the madness and the excitement that is Doctor Who Flux. I think we should take it back a little bit and go to sort of the beginning of your journey. So were you a Doctor Who fan growing up before you got involved in the show? Have you been a fan for a long time, or are you relatively new to the show?
Yeah, I mean, Doctor Who was always part of our television landscape. I mean, I'm very old, Josh. I mean, I remember a time when there were only 3 television channels. So I suppose our television viewing was quite limited. I mean, you know, it was a lot because there wasn't any online access. You know, the televisual day was pretty much split, you know, in what was children's time, what was time for the grown-ups, and then towards, you know, at the end of school time and at weekends and school holidays. I wasn't a super fan of Who back in the early days. I mean, because, you know, I enjoyed, you know, shows like we had a lot, you know, Tomorrow People, Time Slip, The Time Tunnel, Lost in Space, Star Trek. So there was a lot to choose from. I mean, Doctor Who was sort of one amongst, you know, a good catalogue of good shows, some of which they brought back.
Right. Okay. So that's quite interesting, because obviously I think there is a conception nowadays that a lot of the people who work on Doctor Who were the intense fans back in the day. But obviously, so you were aware of the show. I mean, what do you have, like, any early memories of the show? Like what Doctors you would have grown up watching, or any specifics, like in terms of stories that you might have just stuck in your brain slightly? Or
Yeah, it's more, I suppose, for me, you know, my favorite Doctors at the time would have been Peter Davison, obviously, you know, the amazing Tom Baker, you know, watching Mr. McGann in the film version, that was fabulous. Story wise, you know, I was more character driven. So, you know, the Ice Warriors and the Daleks and all of those guys. I mean, I know it's an old cliche, but yeah, they all sent us to behind the sofa without a shadow of a doubt. More recently, I mean, I really got into the show when Russell, you know, first kicked it off with Chris Eccleston. I had the absolute pleasure of meeting Russell just before that started. So yeah, I stuck with it from there. You know, thoroughly enjoyed, you know, the arc and the journey that he set us all on. Little knowing at the time that I would end up working on the show for 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, it was such an explosion when it came back. I feel like even my parents, who weren't massive Doctor Who fans growing up, even they sat down with me to watch it, because it just felt like a bit of an event, especially in 2005 when it came back, that it had finally returned. So I mean, running parallel to that, obviously you're growing up, obviously through based on your answers for Doctors, I imagine, through the 80s and 90s. How did you get into the TV industry? Because I know that, looking at just credits that I can see online, it looks like you've done a few different things in the industry, which have led you here. But where did that all begin for you? Was there any, like, spark or any inspiration that made you go, I want to work in TV?
Do you know what it is, Josh? I think, you know, whenever I'm asked, you know, to talk to students or to go into colleges or university now, my one big piece of advice is don't fret that if you don't know what you want to do, because I probably didn't know what I wanted to do up until about 10 years ago. And I think, and I would say take it as a positive rather than a negative, because that freedom will allow you to go in the direction that life sends you. So here's a brief potted history then. So I'm from a council estate in middle of Somerset, one of 5. Further education, obviously, a million years ago wasn't on our horizon. I ended up joining the army, loved it, had a great time, made some great friends that I'm still friends with today. And when I left the forces in the late 80s, I'd always been creative. I've always been a massive fan of television, of telling stories, of using our imaginations. And I just happened to get a job at Breakfast Television as part of the house services, part of the admin team. And I spent all my free time in the graphics department learning how to use the kit. Well, anyway, long story short, I had some brilliant bosses back in the day who spotted something, and I was sent away to Middlesex Uni to learn how to use the kit properly. I joined the department, and that's where I got the bug, really. About seeing some of the biggest names in film and television history, and watching previews of the show, seeing behind the scenes, seeing what we could do to help fire that imagination, and so that's where it started a long time ago.
No, that's interesting. So again, from what I've seen, so am I right in saying, like you said there, you started more in the visual effects side of things? Is that right?
Yeah, so television graphics was my first foray, and from there I went into animation and visual effects because it was an emerging market at the time. I used to. I suspect not all of your audience will remember this, but I used to create Ulrika Johnson's weather maps on a piece of kit that cost £70,000. I was fortunate enough to be asked to work on a show called Scrap Heap Challenge a couple of years ago, well, more than a couple of years ago, and I created all the animated graphics on that on a piece of software.
Really?
The software cost me £90.
Wow. Yeah, I grew up on Scrap Heap Challenge. I grew up that weekends at my dad's would be Saturday nights, watch Doctor Who, and then Sunday mornings would be like stick on Scrap Heap Challenge, Top Gear, things like that. And we'd just sit and chill on a Sunday and watch stuff like that. So yeah, that's mad. I had no idea that you'd worked on that. So yeah, the whole graphics thing on TV shows, because I feel like it's one of those things that just sort of glosses over some viewers, that someone actually has to sit and make all of these things. They don't just pop up out of nowhere. I think we get wrapped up in the actual people on the screen a bit too much. So from there, do
you know what, Josh? I think that's.
Oh, sorry. Go on. You
sorry,
go.
I was just going to say, I think that's a good thing sometimes. I think, so certainly with visual effects, potentially the only 2 occasions when you're going to notice them is when it's something that's completely outlandish, like the pating, that's, that can't exist. Oh no, maybe they do exist in real life. But anyway, so it's something like that. Or when you see visual effects, and hopefully they've never been seen on Doctor Who, but when they go wrong, when you go, oh no, that really, I don't know why, I can't put my finger on why that doesn't look right, but it doesn't look right. And I think visual effects has grown so much over the last 10 years that it's an absolute art form now.
Yeah, I think. Well, I have to say, again, I think I'm gonna link back to things that I've said in Who Knew Flux over the past 6 episodes, because I recorded the last episode of that last night as we're chatting, and I did chat in there, and I said that I think the visual effects in Doctor Who Flux are the best that we've seen. And I think the show has, in that sense, never looked better. And I was sat watching it the other day. When I was rewatching The Vanquishers, and I was sat there thinking, never mind how I feel, because I mean, even if me, as an 8-year-old in 2005 watching this, would have been mind blown by the visual effects that are on screen. I want to and then I think about fans who've been watching since the 60s and 70s, and what it must be like to them to see Doctor Who with visual effects like this. So yeah, I mean, and again, I think it's the fact that it was on a rewatch that I really picked it up, because it was so immersive the first time round, and it held me so well, which is exactly what you'd want visual effects to do, really. You don't want to be taken out of the story by incredible visual effects, but I think it's just so immersive. And obviously linking that to Doctor Who, so am I right in saying you started as a visual effects producer on Doctor Who, or was there other roles in there beforehand? How did you get into Doctor Who, essentially, into working on the show?
Well, so being based in Bristol, I spent a number of years working, as either a visual effects or an animation producer on big BBC natural history, Nat Geo projects, which is fantastic. I joined, the world famous Dean Egg as visual effects producer on Black Mirror, and from really? There was offered a chance then to join the team on series 11, and was visual effects producer, working alongside, I have to say, some of the best artists in the world. I mean, when you imagine, I worked with two fantastic visual effects supervisors, Mike Bell and Sheila Wickens, and our heads of department. I've worked on movies such as the Marvels, the Batmans, Harry Potter, Blade Runner. The list goes on. Any major movie that you would have seen at the cinema over the last sort of 10 years would have had Dean Egg's hand on it. So for me as a visual effects producer, having that talent available to work on, on a show like Doctor Who was an absolute joy. So I worked on series 11 and then series 12. Was offered an opportunity to produce 3 episodes on series 13. I produced, some short films and some commercials in the past, and thought that it was the right time to maybe consider changing direction. And the beauty of this was I knew Doctor Who, obviously. I knew that, and had worked with all of the team, including Ray Holman and his costume department, and the lovely Claire and the makeup department and the prosthetics team. And I think that, just to quickly sidetrack, I think that's the beauty of visual effects, the way it's developed now. It is working more collaboratively with the art departments, costume, makeup, and all of that now. So I didn't have to learn that. I didn't have to learn, my way from the set to the canteen, and to the production office. So all of those things were already under my belt. So that's where I made that leap and thoroughly enjoyed it, as you can imagine.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I mean, I feel like I want to ask this question for myself, because I know bits and bobs, but I think when it comes to roles in TV, you have a writer, and it's very clearly defined what a writer does, and a director, and it's very clearly defined what a director does. But I feel like with a producer, it's never really been explained to me what a day in the life of a producer is like, or what the day-to-day would be. So from your point of view as a producer, more in general, rather than even just on Doctor Who, what really defines the role? What do you think defines it?
I think one of the important things is no one day is ever the same, and and that's what makes it so interesting. I suppose, in theory, the role is to work with the production team and ensure that the writer's story and vision is translated to the screen. So that's in a sentence. So my day, and again, it's not specifically Doctor Who, but across the board, will be to start working with the script team on, you know, story outlines, scene breakdowns, first draft through to, you know, shooting script, working, you know, putting a good team together. That's the director of photography and the director and your first assistant director, working with every other head of department to make sure that they get as much support and you get as much worth out of them as you can. So casting, costumes, finding locations, building sets, the whole 9 yards, I suppose, and being on set, making sure that everyone's supported, that vision that the writer has entrusted us with, it is seen, and then after the shoot, it's then post-production to make sure that you know, everyone gets everything that they need, and that journey continues. You know, that will include visual effects, it will include a grade, it will include it will include, you know, the soundtrack, and so when the writer is included in that process, they know that what they've written is exactly what they'll see on the screen. And if it's a collaborative process, then you can help change that on that journey as well.
Yeah, so you're essentially like I mean, it sounds like you're basically linking everything together. You're sort of like at the center of a big web of various different departments, and it's all about guiding them on one path from start to finish, which is, I can imagine it would be, I mean, it sounds to me, I mean, you've got a lot more experience of being a producer as I have, which is zero. But it sounds like it would be quite an overwhelming experience, and quite a lot to manage all at once, because you've got to have your eye on so many different things. And I think throwing Doctor Who, the whole realm of Doctor Who into that mix, would just make it even madder. So, I mean, what are your experiences in terms of being a producer on Doctor Who compared to other things that you've worked on? Would you see? Do you think Doctor Who is at all different? Or do you think it's harder or easier in any way, or do you think do you just see it as a similar role?
I think it was harder, and the only reason I say that is because we kicked it off during a pandemic. So obviously that makes everyone's job that much harder. The weight of responsibility is felt by everyone. That's from Chris to the production team. We all feel that weight of responsibility. I watched television, or I have watched television with my son, who is a massive fan and shares this, you know, similar interest to a degree as I do with regards to what we watch. You know, we once spent a summer holiday visiting locations in Wales that we knew, you know, Bad Wolf Bay, for example, you know, and we would just visit those locations. So we were fans of the show, and I would want, if someone's making a television show for me and my family to watch, I want them to be aware that we are going to be watching it, and we expect them to do the very best they can. I think we're all aware of that. I think Doctor Who is unusual because of its history from 1963 and everything that it's done, with the tales that it tells. But I think, for this one in particular, you know, working in a COVID world was probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine, and I think that as well. Just to talk more specifically about Flux and the reception that it's had, because I think, from what I gather, it's been very positively received. And I think one of the things that a lot of people have said, including me, is that, you know, it's incredible that this has been able to have been made in a pandemic. And like Beth, who I was speaking to yesterday on the last episode of Who Knew, when we discussed the Vanquishers, she said, I wasn't even expecting a series of Doctor Who to be made until, you know, maybe 2022, maybe even 2023, because of this mad thing that's happened to us all, this crazy pandemic that we're living through. And it was like the fact that we're even getting it is astounding to me. And not even just getting Doctor Who, you know, I think it would have been, you know, you can go out and you can make Doctor Who, but it's completely different to what we've seen before as well. It takes so many changes and so many risks with the format, especially, which has been well established basically since 2005. This is the biggest change in format we've seen for about 15 years or so. What was there, like, a conscious decision behind that? Because I know that I'm imagining that original plans that were made had to be changed around the pandemic. So, I mean, was there a conscious decision before the pandemic to do that? Or was it something that sort of was birthed out of the pandemic of, well, why don't we just try something different, bearing in mind we've now got less time to work with and you know, these difficulties around us?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't part of that executive production team when these early discussions took place, but I certainly think that the pandemic did shape the series insofar as it would be. The first thing was we had to decide, because I was brought on board before we started the production as COVID manager, so I had to work with the exec production team, with BBC Health and Safety, with all our lovely friends on other productions such as Call the Midwife and Silent Witness and Casualty that were already up and running, working with the government, working with the Welsh government with regards to what we can and can't do. So the first decision was, can we make a series? Second decision was, is it going to be safe for everyone involved? Yeah. And thirdly, and as importantly, are they all going to feel safe? And I got to the point, Josh, where I felt safer on set than I did walking around Tesco's.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I think from to go back to your earlier question and point is I think that the structure of the series was we were going to return to the similar and same sets, so that we didn't have to keep building. The team didn't have to keep building different sets, and we could keep those safe and for everyone, not just for cast but for the crew to work on. That they were constructed in a way that allowed everyone to work safely on them. That we got out to locations. I mean, as you know, Doctor Who has always historically had at least one overseas filming trip during the series. Obviously, that what was taken completely off the table, and also with regards to returning characters as well. So, but I think Chris is always really keen on making sure that, you know, we tell the most amazing story with the most amazing characters, and we take everyone on an epic adventure. His words, not mine. And I think that, you know, I think I can't speak on his behalf, but I should imagine that if the limitations were such that he couldn't do that and he couldn't tell those cracking stories, then maybe he wouldn't have done it. But I think he did. I think he felt supported, and I think the result was, you know, and you're absolutely right, has been fantastically well received. That, you know, that we managed to do that. Yeah. I mean, it's been, as I said, I think, coming from someone who's within the fandom, if you like, and you know, I see a lot of tweets from people, and obviously you're never going to please everyone. No. I mean, you are going to please anyone. You know, you're not going to please everybody all of the time, but the general consensus that I've seen is
this has been one of the best series of Doctor Who, and I firmly stand in that camp as well. That it's one of my favourites since the show's come back. And I think the hype around it as well. I think there's been a lovely sense of, and I think maybe it's something to do with the pandemic itself, in that, you know, the last series of Doctor Who we had was right before lockdown number one. You know, it finished like 2 weeks before we went into lockdown, and then, you know, I think now that we're now creeping slightly back into the worst of it, but, you know, now that we've got a little bit of our freedoms back, and, you know, there's a bit more of excitement in the air of, you know, the new year, and hopefully we can start moving forward.
Yeah,
I just think the hype around this series and the excitement has been, you know, I don't think it's hit these heights since I was a kid, which is lovely. And it's been lovely to be a part of, and lovely to chat to people about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but behind the scenes then, I mean, because in terms of the specific episodes that you worked on, you've got Once Upon a Time, Survivors of the Flux, and The Vanquishers. So it's you've basically got half of the series there. And obviously those ones you worked very closely with Azur Salim as well, who is a newcomer to Doctor Who, as you know, as well, in terms of direction. I've seen a lot of praise heaped on him. I mean, what was it like working with him? I mean, were you involved in the decision to bring him on board?
Yeah, partly. I mean, we've got a cracking, exec production team: Tracy Simpson, series producer Nikki Wilson, and exec producer Matt Strevens. And so they were all part of that process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is he a brilliant director, but he's very collaborative, and he's a lovely person. I will never tell him that to his face. But he's a lovely bloke, and I think that we all felt, we managed to put a lovely team together. I mean, Phil Wood, who's our DOP, Charlie Curran, who was our first AD, we all bonded straight. I mean, that certainly as the night before the others got involved, we bonded straight away, and it was that love of telling a story, and and creating that visual magic. And I go back to the point you made earlier on, though, Josh. I think one of the things that has helped make this particular series a success is when the pandemic struck, we didn't have much that we immediately had to look forward to. Doctor Who gave us something to look forward to, and it gave us an escape off of this world sometimes. And I think we all grasped that. But yeah, no, Az is a lovely guy to work with, and it was that collaboration and that ease at which we communicated as well, I think was particularly useful. And also, you look at the other episodes. I mean, Jamie Stone is such a lovely man, and I think that I'd worked with Jamie to a degree on other episodes as visual effects producer, and Az falls very much into that category of just being a decent man that you want to help and collaborate with as well. So yeah, I tell you what, the Doctor Who production team are very good at putting decent people together. Yeah, not only with their skill set, but also with their attitude. And that attitude, that family attitude, is from Jodie through the whole production team, through the whole crew. If you came on board and you weren't willing to roll your sleeves up and crack on and be supportive and be chirpy every morning, and just do the best you can, you would soon be different to everybody else. So thankfully we never had any of those situations. So Az slotted in really, really nicely. But if he ever asks, I want it to be known that I was nothing but dismissive of him.
Yeah, well, I'll be sure to tell him.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the fantastic production team. I think it's probably been the one I mean, you can say what you like about individual episodes. Obviously, everyone's got their opinions,
Yeah.
especially Doctor Who fans. You know, we're famous for those. But you know, I think since 2005, this the entire production behind Doctor Who and the people that work behind the scenes have all been absolute shining lights. They all from what I know of them and what we've seen on shows like Doctor Who Confidential, they're just phenomenal people as well as being phenomenally talented, which is lovely, and it's lovely to hear that from you as well. And obviously you mentioned Jodie there, because this cast for this series in particular, I mean, Doctor Who is never short of stars, but this cast that you've been working with is an amazing group of people. What was it like being on set day to day with them? And I know that you said obviously that it always felt very safe on set, which is great. Obviously, did that mean that people opened up a little bit more? And I imagine people were quite excited to be back on set after the horrible time that was lockdown last year. So what was the buzz like on set amongst the cast members?
It was a strange one, wasn't it? I mean, I think for me personally, I you know, being part of the team that helped make it COVID safe, I was 100% satisfied that we'd done that. Obviously, the cast, the crew coming back, they hadn't seen the work that we've been doing behind the scenes. So we very quickly brought them up to speed on what measures we were taking, what we expected from them, what support they were going to get. So it was like, you know, your first day back to school when you've maybe moved up a class, and you sort of poke your head around the door a little bit. You know, I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm a little bit excited as well. And then the minute you realise everyone's safe, you were fine. And I mean, because we've all known each other for for 3 years, it's like, someone asked me the other day what it was like working on Doctor Who. This is the thing, Josh. Imagine you're 8 or 9 years old and it's Christmas morning. Do you remember that buzz you used to get when the excitement's like so palpable? You sort of run downstairs at 6 o'clock in the morning and you run into your front room, but it's not the front room, it's the TARDIS. And it's not your nan and your folks there. It's Jodie, it's Az, it's Mandip, it's Coidy, the camera operator. It's all your mates whose company you genuinely enjoy being in. And Christmas Day doesn't finish at 6, 7 o'clock because it starts again the next morning. You get to do it all again. So we were all super excited to see each other. We were super excited with the guest characters that were coming on board. We were super excited to see some of the sets that the fantastic art department have put together, because you actually feel like you're down underground in Williamson's Tunnel, or you're on board a steamer. But at the same time, we had to make sure that we maintained all the COVID protocols, and we had a lovely fella on set with us, Andy, our medic, with an extendable stick to make sure that we all stayed 2 meters apart where appropriate.
Lovely. And I imagine, I mean, because I imagine in terms of filming wise, was Jodie aware that this was like her last full series? Because I'm aware that also, I believe that all of these were filmed. Was it pretty concurrently with the specials that are coming next year? Was it all sort of done in one chunk, or was there a gap in between? I'm not sure, but I don't know whether Jodie was aware. Was there an air that this would be like nearing the end of her run, or were you not really aware of that decision at the time?
No, to be honest with you, Josh, that wasn't something that I was necessarily aware of, and that's not a negative thing. My focus was on reading all 6 episodic scripts, making sure that I understood the story, the stories that the 6 episodes were telling. I never had any indication from Jodie or any of the team where she was in her life cycle, and I read news as it broke at the same time that you would have done. And for that reason, as a fan of television, as a fan of the show, I am not going to any screenings of any of the specials. I haven't read any of the scripts. I don't want to know anything about them. I want to sit down in front of my television and I want to watch them and enjoy them at the same way that the rest of us will.
Yeah, that's lovely. I'm very excited for them, especially. I'm very excited for this year of Doctor Who, and then obviously beyond that as well. Russell coming back. Yeah. It's a very exciting time to be a Doctor Who fan. But it's lovely to hear that obviously you want that context and you want that experience as a fan. That's lovely. I mean, what we'll do now is. We're going to take a very short break, but when we come back, we've got the little matter that is the return of the DVD collection, to see what episode you would like to enter to the DVD collection.
Yeah.
Welcome back. We're back with Pete Levy for a return to a wonderful segment that we have on the show, which is the DVD collection.
By the power of Grayskull.
The Unicorn and the Wasp or Love and Monsters?
Which one do you think I'll prefer?
No, I mean, which one do you want to watch first?
You are pulling my leg.
So, Pete, it's the DVD collection. Obviously, we all know the rules by now, but it's a collection of quintessential Doctor Who episodes that are submitted by our guests. I mean, just briefly, what episode have you chosen, and what are your reasons why?
I felt that I could choose any episode from 11, 12 or 13 series that I've worked on, but I thought that would be unfair. So I would pick one that I had no hand in at all. And for me, it would be Vincent and the Doctor.
Oh, a lovely pick, a lovely episode. One of my favourites of the Matt Smith era. What is it that's drawn you to that one particularly? Because obviously there's a lot to pick from across all of Doctor Who.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it was written by Richard Curtis, and at this time of year we're even more fans of Richard Curtis than any other time of the year, maybe. One of my passions is art and painting. I've been to the Van Gogh Museum a couple of times, and that feeling that you get, wouldn't it be nice if someone who didn't know in their lifetime how much joy and beauty they brought into the world, if we could just show them that for a moment. And I think that's why I particularly love that. I think in particular the scene when the Doctor and Amy take Vincent in to meet the museum curator, that the soundtrack, the camera work, everything about it, even from a practical point of view, watching the essays in the background, it's just sublime. And I think, the tears in Vincent's eyes, if we could do that to anyone that's been wronged or hasn't realized how appreciated they will become, that's what I would like to do. And as a result of that episode, my son, who was young, he must have been 9, 10 at the time, we went to a gallery, obviously not his favorite thing to do, but he glanced across, and there was, on the wall was hanging a version of Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers, and he ran towards it with absolute abandon and then stopped in front of it and looked around, expecting to see the Doctor or Vincent. And I think for that moment, the Doctor Who, it just hit the spot for me.
Yeah. Oh, that is absolutely lovely. Yeah, it's one of those episodes. It's consistently at you know, the most emotional moments in Doctor Who, and yeah, Richard Curtis and Doctor Who just works. It just works, and I'd love to see it again. I'd love to see him return. But yeah, fantastic pick. And I mean, now we've just got a few questions. I'm afraid we're not going to have time to get through everybody, but because a lot of people were very, very interested in chatting to you, but hopefully all of your questions have been answered if I don't get around to you. But it's time to go on over to the hellscape that is bloody Twitter.
For God's sake! Bloody Twitter!
So bloody Twitter. In no particular order. I mean, the first question is from a very dear friend of the show, someone who's been on a few times. It's George Sheard at GB Sheard on Twitter. He said, "Is there anyone notable, either in front or behind the camera, that you loved working with on Doctor Who and would kill to work with again?"
Wow, George, great question. Thank you so much. I mean, I remember Jodie saying this to me once. There's not one single person that we don't like on the show, in front of or behind the camera, and that includes the production team, you know, our location managers. I would love to work with any of them again. Anyone in particular that would mean anything. I mean, Ray, you know, I've mentioned them before. Ray and Simon and Brady and the costume team, superb. Claire and her makeup team, superb. Danny Marie and the prosthetics team, they're all, you know, really lovely and amenable, and they put so much effort in, you know, under difficult circumstances. I suppose in front of the camera, apart from the main team, which clearly I'd work with again at the drop of a hat. Loved working with Kevin McNally, loved working with Craig Parkinson, Craig Ells, funny people, and absolute professionals, but nice people as well. So yeah, any of them. Sorry, Josh, that's a pretty, you know, broad answer.
No, that's fine. That's fine, because I think it's sort of what we'd expect with what we know from this production team. You know, they're all fantastic. The next question is from another friend of the show, Ben at Real Enthusiast. He's asked, who was the biggest troublemaker on set? And he has also said, just to make things more difficult, Jodie, Mandip and John are off the table. Wow. So other than those three, who would you see as the biggest troublemaker?
Well, you've probably, another fabulous question. I mean, you've probably taken, you know, a couple of the biggest troublemakers off the table already. You know, I think it's like any sort of group of mates that are working together. There is what gets you through long days when you're having to shoot scenes over and over again, sometimes in torrential rain, or it's freezing cold as it was up in Liverpool. You know, it's that banter that gets you through. I would nominate, we had a lovely lad called Matty Island, who was part of the props team. He had that, you know, sometimes you meet those people that just looking at their smile just starts you giggling. Matty had an infectious laugh. I remember there was one occasion when our gaffer was wearing a yellow t-shirt. He wore a yellow t-shirt on set. Unbeknownst to him, for a good couple of hours, he was walking around with a sign on his back which just simply said, "Butlin's staff," which we know was Matty's handiwork. So yeah, it would be Matty.
Matty. Well, I hope to have Matty on the pod one day. If he ever wants to come on, that'll be an absolute hoot, I'm sure. And I think we've got time for just one more. I'm going to go to who am I going to pick? This is always a tough one. I've got all of these questions written down, and they're all fantastic. We'll go to Oscar Grouchos, who is another good friend of the show. He said, you produced the show at a unique time in its history, COVID-19 presenting its own set of challenges. Doctor Who has throughout its history proved boundlessly creative when against the odds. But what lessons would post-Flux Pete tell his younger self at the beginning of his Who journey?
Wow, Oscar, great question. That's really made me
always eloquently put as well from Oscar.
Yeah. Okay. I think I might have outlined a couple of the sort of COVID related issues that we had to deal with. But if I had to tell myself, it would be just try and enjoy it even more if that was possible. We were all a little bit dubious, but as everyone would have been going back to work. But I think just love it and enjoy it and appreciate that it's a massive adventure. Not only that, it's a massive honor working on a show like Doctor Who with the fantastic viewers and fans that we've got. So yeah, just relax, Pete. Just enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's some lovely advice. Well, that's it from bloody Twitter. Thank you to everybody who got in touch. You're all marvelous, and I think as we come nearer to the end of the show, I think it's only fitting that we take a little stroll down everybody's favorite corridor and we have a little look and see who Pete would like to enter to the corridor of fame.
Have you ever been limited by who you were before?
One day I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back.
Our lives are different to anybody else's. That's the exciting
Dear Sarah Jane?
Do I have the right?
Some people's small, beautiful events is what life is all about.
Compared to us, 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really.
Every great decision creates ripples, like a huge boulder dropped in a lake.
But it was a childish dream that made you a doctor. You dreamt you could no more.
I'm not just the time. I'm the last of the time.
It just disappears, doesn't it? Everything you are gone in a moment, like breath on a mirror.
I do what I do because it's right. Because it's decent. And above all, it's kind.
Love abides in the face of everything.
So, without further ado, obviously the corridor of fame. If this is your first time listening, I know that some people might have jumped on during the hype train of Flux. The corridor of fame is a collection of people submitted by my guests, who just get a little bit of extra recognition here, and they get their portraits hung up on a metaphorical wall in a metaphorical corridor as a legend of Doctor Who, basically. So who would you, in these circumstances, Pete, submit to the corridor of fame?
I think that's really easy, and I tell you for why, Josh. I think the reason that we are collectively as fans of the show so collaborative and so supportive of each other, which is very evident from Twitter and other social media outlets, is because Doctor Who champions those of us that try hard. We are supportive. It doesn't matter if you're different in any way, shape or form. There's always a place for you. And I think for that reason, I would put certainly Waris Hussein, who was the original director of Doctor Who back in 1963 and the first director of Asian descent on British television, a groundbreaker. I would put him there, and I would also put Verity Lambert, who was the original producer back in 1963, the first female producer on British television. And hopefully we're not there yet, but starting that journey of getting more diversity in front of and behind the camera. But back in 1963, wow, didn't they start it off?
Yes, beautiful. And I think you're right. I think you have to put these two in together. I think they've got to both go in. Yeah. And I think they're two people that are, I mean, when I started this podcast, when I started the Corridor of Fame, I looked at obviously Warris and Verity. I looked at everyone who was there at the beginning, and I thought, I know you're going to get there. You're going to be in it at some point. So that's fine. And I know someone's going to put you in. And I'm very happy that you have. I'm very, very, very happy that you've put them both in, because I mean, what more can be said? They are the reason we're all here. They're the reason I've got these silly little Daleks on my shelf. They're the reason there's a blue box behind me. They're the reason why I sit and I talk to people about this wonderful, brilliant, daft program. And I mean, I don't think any of us can thank them more. No. I mean, absolutely fantastic choice. And I mean, that brings us really to the end of the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, because you know, Doctor Who Flux, as I said, has been such a welcome addition to this universe. It's been such a welcome installment of Doctor Who. I feel like it's exactly the kind of Doctor Who that we needed after this mad couple of years. And just as someone who's helped bring it to life, obviously I know that the production team and the cast are massive. And you know, if I was able to sit here and chat to every single one of them individually, I mean, I will if they want to. If they want to come on, I'll do it. I will sit here for hours. But for now, I've got you right here in front of me, and I want to say, from me and from everybody else who's enjoyed Doctor Who Flux, thank you for making this happen.
Bless you, Josh.
Thank you for bringing it to our screens. And I do have one last question. One last question, which I ask everybody at the end of every single episode of Who Knew, of the main show. It's been a while. As I said, we've not done this since like October, but we're back. And I have to ask you, in a sentence, what does Doctor Who mean to you?
Doctor Who means to me that anything is possible, wherever you are, whoever you are, and whoever you're with.
That is beautifully put. Absolutely beautifully put. Thank you again for coming on. Before we go, pleasure, Josh. Before we go, I mean, where can people find you? And if there's anything that you want to talk about that's coming up for you, or anything, go ahead.
Oh, bless you. I really appreciate you know, your engagement with the show, with the fans as well, Josh. You know, I've listened to the show before. It's funny, it's engaging. For those odd one or two people that feel it necessary to make not always positive comments, we will continue to ignore you. So I've swapped the Doctor for lots of doctors and nurses and paramedics and porters, and I'm now producing a couple of episodes of Casualty, which I am loving. So I would quite like the camera to turn to one Doctor as he peels his human face off, and we see a Silurian underskin. But I don't think I would be able to get away with that.
I don't know if they'll let you have that, but you know, maybe you can sneak a pating in the background or something. That'd be wonderful.
I'm on I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, Pete_Levy. I will post photographs as they crop up on my timeline. I will keep posting about adventures in TV. If anyone's looking for advice or guidance or job opportunities or whatever, I always reshare those. But if that's where you want to go, never ever give up. If an ex-squaddy like me can do it, then anyone can do it. But yeah, please reach out. I'll always be very happy to engage.
Yes, lovely. And of course, the podcast, the main show, is now back. I don't know what's coming in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, I'm working on a Christmas special. I'm trying to make something happen, but we'll see what happens. But there will be more Who Knew every single week, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube, where you get video versions of the podcast like this. If you are watching us, please like, share, subscribe, send it around to your mates if you can. I I love hearing people listening to Who Knew and seeing people, like seeing maybe at the top of people's Spotify Wrapped. That is very, very weird, but it's absolutely lovely. And you can follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast, on Instagram, whoknewdwpod. No, I've not updated it yet. I'm still so far behind on that, but I will sort it out. And you can subscribe to us on Patreon, where you can get loads of rewards, early access to content where possible, early guest announcements. You can get discounts off our merch store as well. You can buy a lovely Who Knew t-shirt. So that's that. And thank you again, Pete. I've said it a few times, but thank you again for coming on. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. And I'll see you all soon. Big thank you to all of our patrons, and a massive shout out to Alfie Innes and Cal King. Thanks for listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts and now on YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you can, as it really helps us out. And a massive thanks to the Sononauts for lending their cover of the Doctor Who theme to be the theme for the podcast.